The Brandon Aiyuk saga with the San Francisco 49ers took an unexpected twist this weekend. What it means for the 49ers going forward, and who's the bad guy here? Is it Brandon Aiyuk or the 49ers to blame? And quick peek at the NFL Sunday that was as well. On today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock here with you solo. Apologies, we didn't get to this Brandon Aiyuk story sooner. Try to get in an emergency podcast. Our schedule's not clicking here with Croc, so I'm going to go solo here on this Sunday afternoon, getting ready for Sunday Night Football as the San Francisco 49ers are idle on this Sunday, waiting for the Monday night matchup with the Carolina Panthers in a big twist to the season and the organization in San Francisco for the 49ers with the announcement that the 49ers have voided the guarantees on Brandon Aiyuk's contract. So there's so much to unfold here and so much to get into. And I want to talk about what it means right now, why this saga is definitely still not over, where the 49ers are, where Aiyuk is right now, seemingly based on the little we've heard from him and his shopping spree and his Instagram posts. Of course, what it means for the 49ers going forward, 2026. Speaking of voids, how about the void it leaves for the 49ers at wide receiver? And it changes the needs going into the 2026 season and really makes me question a lot about what's been going on with the San Francisco 49ers and what we don't know behind the scenes about this whole thing and about many other things as it pertains to Brandon Aiyuk. I'm sure by now everybody knows what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk, and his contract is not voided. The guarantees were voided. So it opens the door for an exit for Brandon Aiyuk from the San Francisco 49ers this offseason, where the guarantees aren't there for his contract. And there will still be some dead money. There's still signing bonus that was already paid just 15 months ago when he signed this extension. And so there's going to be an accelerated cap hit there. And so the 49ers, if they were to cut or trade Brandon Aiyuk, trade seemingly out the door right now. I'll talk about possibly that avenue, and an avenue that could, I think, help both sides. That doesn't feel like we're going in that direction, though. When the 49ers cut Brandon Aiyuk, whether it's pre or post June 1st, either all of that cap hit will be accelerated to the 2026 salary cap, or if it's post June 1st, then that means you can split that in half, and you kind of you take some of the hit now, and then you take more of the hit in 2027. So it evens the hit across the board. And I would imagine that's probably preferable for the San Francisco 49ers, and that's the way they would go to push a little bit of it down the road. And most teams these years just enjoy kicking the can down the road as it is when it pertains to salary cap stuff and moving stuff into the future so they can operate in the current. But it does open the door for the 49ers to get out of this Brandon Aiyuk contract, which clearly they are not a fan of this deal. And they did not almost instantly want to have this contract hanging over their heads anymore. And they didn't want to have Brandon Aiyuk signed. As much as they wanted to have Brandon Aiyuk, and as much as Kyle Shanahan wanted to save themselves from the Brandon Aiyuk trade last summer, there's still something going on, whether it's the organization, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's what shorts he's able to wear at practice. And clearly something else going on that we don't exactly know why, but we have some hints as to why this void was even able to happen for Brandon Aiyuk's contract. And Kyle Shanahan, speaking on it, talked about an unknown aspect of what happened in the spring and the summer leading up to July, when this decision was made, was actually in July. And so I'm not surprised at all now that there's more weirdness and more inconsistency and unknown about when Brandon Aiyuk was going to come back from his injury in the 2025 season, and why it felt like maybe the doctors have kind of cleared him and expect him to be back, but he doesn't feel like he can come back yet. And so I don't think we probably should expect Brandon Aiyuk to come back. But more about July. And as many people smarter than me and that know the intricacies of contracts have talked about, if this was something that was voided in July, that means there's something that Brandon Aiyuk didn't do as far as his rehab, as far as reporting to training camp, which happens at the very end of July. So not reporting, not being around the team, not rehabbing, something like that was not done correctly and by the book, which allowed the 49ers to have the opportunity to get out from under this contract and void that deal. And I'm sure there's been things that have happened for other teams, and Kyle Shanahan mentioned it. He's been around and coaching for 20 years in the NFL. It's hard to believe Kyle Shanahan's already been coaching for 20 years, but he's been coaching for 20 years in the NFL, and he's never seen a contract be voided like this, and guarantees be voided like this. And so it's a rarity. And even if players screw up, it's got to be a situation where the team really does not want to honor that contract. And clearly the 49ers don't here. So if you're asking whether or not Brandon Aiyuk will be a 49er in 2026 and beyond, I think that's an obvious no. The real question for me with Brandon Aiyuk in the immediate future for 2025 is, will he actually play for the 49ers this season before he is either cut or traded? And I'm betting not, but I'm really betting not that Brandon Aiyuk doesn't play. But there is an opportunity for him to play. He's still under contract. He's under contract still through 2028. So who knows what other twists and turns this could bring us here until we get some closure at some point, which I assume is 2026. But who knows with Brandon Aiyuk in this saga, because I don't know what's in his heart. And it seems like the 49ers have kind of flip-flopped on this as well as it pertains to Brandon Aiyuk and whether they were going to trade him or not. The contract felt odd from the start, and so I'm not surprised. And look, the injury obviously exacerbates the whole thing for Brandon Aiyuk last year. And he, after the long holdout, has a slow start. He has the argument with Kyle Shanahan where he's wearing the wrong shorts at practice, and everything was just weird the whole time. You thought it was over and not weird anymore, and it just stayed weird. And then he has this catastrophic injury, and we don't even know what the player is going to look like. But the way he was running around earlier on in the season, it felt like he was probably a lot closer than this. So there's something else going on here. I think the 49ers are trying to save face by clearly putting out there in the media that they're hoping that Brandon Aiyuk comes back. They're hoping that Brandon Aiyuk plays. And obviously Brandon Aiyuk would help the 49ers this year. But I don't know if that's disingenuous, if the 49ers are putting that out there because they actually want him to come back, or contractually and kind of legally, it's a position they have to take because they can't seem like they're pushing a player out, and they want to stay above board with everything that happens with Brandon Aiyuk and his contract and the guarantees that were voided in that deal. But it would help the 49ers, obviously, if he played for two reasons. One, because it would make them a better football team. They're trying to make the playoffs right now. And if Brandon Aiyuk actually is healthy and ready to play, that makes the 49ers better. Brandon Aiyuk, even at whatever percent we expect him to be when he comes back, is a preferred option to the players that are out there that are starting for the San Francisco 49ers. And it would be really nice to see what we've not and maybe never will get is like that full offense and what it was supposed to look like with Kittle and McCaffrey and Pearsall and Brandon Aiyuk, because the Pearsall injury last year, the Aiyuk injury this year, and obviously the Christian McCaffrey injury last year as well. So that's just something, over the course of 2 years, we actually never even got to see. If Brandon Aiyuk plays this year, it helps the 49ers on the field. But if Brandon Aiyuk gets on the football field and looks like old Brandon Aiyuk, and he wouldn't have to do it much, he would just have to do it for a couple of games, that would make other teams in the league infinitely more excited to add Brandon Aiyuk to their roster. And it could potentially entice a team to actually say, well, there's no guarantees on this deal yet. That means compared to other contracts around the NFL, we could restructure some things. It's actually, the signing bonus has already been paid. This is actually not a bad deal for us to take on. And if he is that Brandon Aiyuk, and he showed that over the course of a few games at the end of the season in 2025, then we're willing to throw some draft picks at the 49ers. Even if it's a middling draft pick, that's more preferable for the 49ers than to just cut him and get nothing. Then maybe the 49ers could get something in return there. But it's also beneficial to Brandon Aiyuk to do that as well for his own value. Again, for those teams in the offseason, whether he's cut or traded. And Brandon Aiyuk, if he's hurt and never plays this year, that is going to hurt him in the pocketbook. He's not going to recoup that. He's not going to get a 4-year, $120 million contract with $70 million guaranteed this offseason. He probably won't get that if he did play well for a few games. He's definitely not going to get that if he doesn't play at all, and teams don't know exactly what they're getting for Brandon Aiyuk. So a lot more to get into here. More from Aiyuk's side, more from the 49ers side. Where does the blame go? And the implications of future roster building, the NFL draft, and we got to talk about where the 49ers are with their own draft picks. And so few of those first rounders are actually producing for the 49ers on the field right now in the Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch era. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Prize Picks, and the Prize Picks app is the funnest, simplest. It's the way to get involved with sports every single time there's a game on, right? And it's super easy. And the holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, of course, tons of NFL action, and it's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call and get paid for it is Prize Picks. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement this holiday season to the sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute. App makes the whole process smooth and intuitive, and the early payout feature is a great bonus. When your lineup starts strong, you may get the option to cash out early. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Okay, so again, I don't know what's in Brandon Aiyuk's heart. According to his social media, he did a little jewelry shopping, had some bling, had the letter B, it looked like, on his chest. And so he was celebrating this moment, even though it was something that already happened. The fact that it was out there, and clearly Brandon Aiyuk doesn't feel like he wants to be a part of the 49ers organization anymore. I don't think that's a surprise. I mean, it's probably why, even though it doesn't really help anybody, unless he's not healthy yet. If a healthy Brandon Aiyuk decides not to play at all this season at the end of the year for the 49ers, if the 49ers do indeed want him back on the field, it's going to hurt him in the pocketbook. And he said, quote, "We gone," in a post on social media. So that's where Brandon Aiyuk is right now. He's thinking he is gone. He wants to be out. And I think that's the way that this thing is clearly going to end at some point in this 2026 offseason. But here's the other part of the story that I don't fully know the inner workings of the NFLPA and contract structures. And in fact, I know way too much about NFL contracts that I would prefer not to know about. A lot of the stuff is kind of silly, how much we actually know and all the intricacies and the lawyers and agents and everybody that's involved with these insane big money sports contracts. And the fact that it's all public and out there is kind of wild sometimes. But as far as the Players Association goes, the report was that Brandon Aiyuk is okay with not filing a grievance about the voided contract. And if there's any element of this that the NFLPA thinks is not right from the 49ers side, my question is, I don't know if it's even completely up to Brandon Aiyuk. Because I don't think the NFL, even if one player wants it to be a certain way, I don't think the NFLPA wants to set a precedent that allows teams, even if the player is okay with it, to void contracts and void guarantees. That doesn't help the player pool as a whole, which is what the NFLPA represents. They don't represent just one player. They represent all of the players. It's the Players Association. And I'm sure there will be people who say, wait a second, I don't care if Brandon Aiyuk's cool with this or not. This is not something that we can allow. And we don't want teams to pressure players into the future to say, hey, if you want out, okay, let's crush this contract. And then all of a sudden, that's less money to go to the players. If you're voiding contracts, it's something that Kyle Shanahan said. He hadn't seen it in 20 years. It's not something that happens a lot. It's not something that the NFLPA wants to happen. And I'm not sure, even if Brandon Aiyuk wants it, that the NFLPA is going to be like, oh, sure, let's just go voiding contracts. So that's still a question I have. And that's why I think this thing is not over. And it's not over from the 49ers side. It's not over from Brandon Aiyuk's side. And it's not over from the agent, lawyer, NFLPA side at all. It's so this thing could get still kind of weird and kind of ugly, and um, it might have to be negotiated once more again to try to make everybody happy, whether it's the NFLPA, Brandon Aiyuk side with his agent, and the 49ers side, and Brandon Aiyuk's new team's side in 2026. So we're going to hear a lot more about this, and there's going to be more news reported. And I would love to hear more from, because Kyle Shanahan kind of, pled the fifth a little bit, played dumb a little bit to some of this too. And we need to hear from John Lynch. We need to hear from Parag or Jed York about this. This is a pretty big deal. It's a pretty unprecedented move for the 49ers and for most teams around the NFL and most players around the NFL. And then I want to hear from Brandon Aiyuk too. Like what's going on? It's something more than he wore the wrong shorts to practice is going on here. He even admitted, I made it harder than it needed to be after the 49ers at the last minute decided not to trade him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they signed that contract. It seemed like then it's like, okay, they got it figured out. And he's like, whatever. This is a huge moment in my life. Maybe I made this a little bit more difficult than it needed to be, but we're cool. I'm here. I want to be here. And that's what he said, right? But sometime either he wasn't really bought in, or at some point after that, again, something else happened and he did not want to be around. And so I would love some more clarification. Hopefully we do get that soon, figuring out what the heck happened to allow the 49ers to void this contract in July. What part of his contract Brandon Aiyuk did not complete? I assume it has to be rehab. He wasn't around the team. He wasn't rehabbing and reporting properly at some point prior to the start of training camp. I mean, that's what happens in July. And so that's what I assume, until I hear otherwise, had to have happened here. Otherwise, none of this makes sense from a timeline perspective. And then, of course, why Brandon Aiyuk feels the way he does, why he wanted out so bad, why he made everything so difficult with the contract negotiation, why he signed in the end, and then why he wanted out again after that. So a lot still to figure out here with Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers side of things, and how this all came to pass, because really it's stupid. This is really dumb that we're sitting here in November talking about a player's contract getting voided and a really important player for the 49ers that they could use this year and into the future, because they don't have a number one wide receiver. That this is becoming a divorce for really no good reason. By the way, Brandon Aiyuk, he's given up a lot of money in this situation, being okay with the voided contract. And who knows, maybe it's not up to him, and he has to be okay with it because he screwed up and that got voided, and that's just it. It doesn't matter if the NFLPA, doesn't matter if Aiyuk doesn't like it. Maybe it's just that's going to be the way it is because he clearly didn't do the things, and it's written in ink on his contract. The 49ers are going to need a wide receiver. All those fans out there that are putting in offensive tackles in 2026 mock drafts to the 49ers in the first round, wide receiver jumps to the top of the list. There's still plenty of needs for the 49ers from a pass rush perspective. I think even with Bosa back, there's a number of other aspects of the team, offensive line, center, offensive tackle, the offensive left tackle of the future. There's a lot of needs the 49ers will need to address in the 2026 offseason. Wide receiver with Brandon Aiyuk on board and Ricky Pearsall, you'd be talking about Juwan Jennings. Do you just draft Aiyuk? All you need is a number 3. Let's see what Cowing, if he can never the field, looks like. What about Jordan Watkins? What does he end up looking like? Maybe you draft the guy in the mid rounds again. Wide receiver jumps to the top of the list. Watching the 49ers play right now without Brandon Aiyuk on the outside, even with Ricky Pearsall back, they are missing something. They need something, and not a little piece. They need a big piece. And I don't think signing Juwan Jennings is the right move. in that he's not the right move to, okay, let's swap that out. You don't sign Brandon Aiyuk or you don't have Brandon Aiyuk anymore. Well, now you can do a deal with Juwan Jennings. I don't think that's the path. They need to go big and try to find another for sure starter number one guy ahead of Ricky Pearsall, not someone to be a number two, number three. So let's talk a little bit more about the offseason, a little bit more about the 49ers draft and their history and how rough that starts to look for the 49ers with another first round pick not available. And maybe some notes here on what we saw so far from NFL Sunday. A lot of teams that would help the 49ers to lose. Those teams did not lose. They won. And this playoff pursuit is heating up quite a bit for the 49ers and a lot of teams in the NFC. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Game Time and the Game Time app. And I've told you guys before, and I'll tell you again, if you are a sports fan and you don't have the Game Time app, what are you even doing with your life? Download the app right now because Game Time is the app that gives the advantage back to fans for buying tickets to sporting events, buying tickets to concerts, comedy shows, theater events. All of it you can find at Game Time. And let's be honest, it's awesome. Being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. Maybe you got tickets to that great concert, right? And that show, and you're like, man, phenomenal seats. I'm going to go see my favorite band. I'm going to go see my favorite artist, and I'm going to be up front. And then getting tickets is just a complete hassle for it. Between queues, login screens, the prices jumping at checkout, super frustrating. And that's why I use Game Time. Game Time is fast, easy, backed by the Game Time guarantee, 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, and you can get some awesome last-minute seats as well. And I've done it a number of times, whether it's San Francisco Giants baseball games, concert tickets, some fantastic deals, half off the ticket price, last-minute seats. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So the NFL draft. Let's talk a little about looking forward. Like, hit me with your names at BD Peacock. Let Crocky know at Coach Crocky on Twitter. Drop the names in the YouTube comments because we're going to have to scout wide receivers a lot harder and early wide receivers, first round caliber guys, when I did not expect that was going to be what this January, February, and March was going to entail for my calendar. I always look at all the prospects and all the positions, but I didn't think I'd be looking at many of the first round wide receivers, but we no doubt will now. So that is absolutely a huge aspect of this thing for the 49ers going into the 2026 offseason. You got to start talking about names like AJ Brown. Will he get cut? What if it's just what if it ends up being a swap of AJ Brown for Brandon Aiyuk? Whether you trade the players one for one or they just both get cut and then you sign AJ Brown. What about Keon Coleman's been a healthy scratch for the Buffalo Bills, right? So there's going to be some veteran players and some current NFL players going to be available for the 49ers. They might have to attack this thing with a two-pronged approach of a veteran and a rookie draft pick at wide receiver to make sure they don't go through what they went through this year at the wide receiver position. But we're going to be looking a lot at the wide receiver draft. And you know, it might be need number one now going into the 2026 offseason, even over offensive tackle, even over name the position. Wide receiver, a huge need all of a sudden. Why is it a huge need? Well, Brandon Aiyuk is not going to be on the team is one of the big reasons. And then you start to look at the missing draft picks that the 49ers have had from the Trey Lance trade. And going back, and it's really funny. It's kind of a Rorschach test in a way, because I hear a lot of fans, bad-mouthing Brandon Aiyuk, bad-mouthing the 49ers. You got to fire John Lynch. But John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are tied at the hip as far as those personnel decisions go. John Lynch goes and gets the guys that Kyle Shanahan wants. And one of those was Brandon Aiyuk. And Brandon Aiyuk was Shanahan's guy. They traded up to get him in the draft. And then they wanted to trade him away. And Shanahan ran up the stairs and nixed the trade to the Steelers at the last minute. And then now they're still divorcing, right? And so, whether it's Dante Pettis or any other number of players, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers coaching staff has a big part in who the 49ers draft. So you can't separate John Lynch from Kyle Shanahan as far as the draft goes. And in a lot of ways, I think Kyle Shanahan has proven that he's not the best. Like, he's an awesome coach, maybe not as good of a talent evaluator than he is an X and O's guy and a coach. And maybe he should leave John Lynch and the scouting department more to deciding some of those picks. But then we've heard some stories about some of the coaches finding the guys, Brock Purdy and the reason some players are on the team. It's just all intertwined with the scouting department, and the coaching staff has a big part of it. So it's really too hard to separate it to say, oh, you got to keep Kyle Shanahan, but fire John Lynch because of whatever you think has gone on there with some mistakes, whether it's contracts or the draft. But I want to highlight what's gone on the last, almost 10 years now. And if you go back 10 years, that happens to be the 2016 draft and the DeForest Buckner draft. And so it's kind of a Rorschach test when you look at, and I'm going to try to bring it on the screen here for you guys if you're watching on YouTube, just a graphic of the first round picks. And look, the 49ers have missed a lot in the first 3 rounds, day 1 and day 2 in the draft. And they've been one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL on day 3 to make up for it. So you're going to say fire the GM of a team that's been to 2 Super Bowls, that has constructed that went from having an awful roster to constructing a Super Bowl contender, right? They've done it a strange way. I don't know if I would, write the handbook saying this is how you build a Super Bowl caliber team. You start lighting first round picks on fire and then day 2 picks and draft kickers in the 3rd round. That's not the way you build it. But the 49ers have still built that. They are in a position right now to go to the playoffs. They've been to Super Bowls and they built that roster, even with some mistakes and clear and obvious mistakes along the way. I'm going to share, though, just the first round picks over the course of the last 9 drafts for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. And then I clipped it with the 2016 first rounder and DeForest Buckner on there too, just because it's like that kind of hangs over the 49ers with the trading of Buckner that ends up, and it makes it a clean 10-year picture. But you swap Buckner for the first round pick that becomes Javon Kinlaw, which was a whiff for the 49ers. So you end up getting nothing from this super talent that you had in DeForest Buckner, who's still the second best player to Nick Bosa on this entire list of first round picks for the last 10 years for the 49ers. But you go back to 2017, Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, those were not good draft picks. Like, you have to be honest about it. Mike McGlinchey, he was a starter. He was a good pick. That is a hit in the NFL, as much as Mike McGlinchey has taken a lot of grief from 49ers fans, and the 49ers didn't even end up signing him to a second contract. Overall, I think for a top 10 pick, you should want and expect more. But that is a hit because that wasn't a bust of a player, Mike McGlinchey, in 2018. They ended up getting Fred Warner as well in the 3rd round that year and did some big things. In 2018 and 2019 was a big part of them building that Super Bowl roster. Obviously, number 2 overall pick in 2019, Nick Bosa was a home run pick. Then you go to 2020, and I mentioned the Javon Kinlaw pick. That was a bust. That was a bad selection. I didn't like it at the time. I like it even less now. And then Brandon Aiyuk looks worse now just because of how weird this thing has gone. He goes from being pretty productive as a rookie, then has this weird doghouse sophomore season, then has back-to-back 1,000-yard years, and then the weirdness all begins, and you end up signing for this huge contract, and he's played 7 games since then, and maybe that'll be the end of his career. So just a really weird one, and in the end, you would hope for more, even though you did get 2 years, and the talent was there with Brandon Aiyuk, so it's kind of a hit, but just kind of ends in a weird way that it doesn't feel like a hit and a pick that you might want to go another direction with. And like McGlinchey and Aiyuk are hits of draft picks, but you're not wrong if you're like, but you know what? I hoped for more from those spots, and you should, especially from a top 10 pick in Mike McGlinchey. You didn't even sign. Then things go off the rails in 2021 because not only did they draft a quarterback who's done nothing for them, but they also spent 2 extra first-round picks in 2022 and 2023 to go up and get Trey Lance. So that's 3 first-round picks that were just flushed straight down the toilet, essentially. Luckily, 2022 draft, 7th round, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy shows up and really saves everybody's behinds, or we might not even have to talk about firing John Lynch right now because they were able to save face and get out of that one okay. Houdini-like exit and escape from the debacle of what the 2021 draft was. Ricky Pearsall, first rounder in 2024, is the only Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch first round pick that will be on the field for the San Francisco 49ers out of 9 drafts, which is kind of wild and definitely, as my guy Eric Crocker would say, not ideal because the 2025 first rounder, Michael Williams, has a torn ACL and he's out for the year as well. So 1 out of 9 are currently on the field for the 49ers. 3 out of 9 are even going to be on the team in 2026. That's Bosa, Pearsall, and Williams. And so we really don't even know what Pearsall and Williams are going to be throughout their career. And man, knock on wood that Bosa's rehab from another ACL injury goes well. But again, the 49ers have built a Super Bowl roster despite, I think, some very bad decisions, namely the 2017 and especially the 2021 draft, which puts them, I think, well below the line of what you would expect from draft picks over the course of first round draft picks, at least over the course of their tenure of the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. And then now you have this just really odd situation going on with Brandon Aiyuk, and it just makes everybody look bad is the takeaway. I don't think there's a good guy here. I don't know if there's a complete bad guy here, but there's plenty of blame to go around, I think, for everybody, the 49ers organization and Brandon Aiyuk and how this whole thing is played out. And it's really just silly and kind of just a joke, if we're being honest. You know, it's a lot of fodder. I know there's a lot of fans out there that like to fight with Cowboys fans and Rams fans and whoever the Niners are playing that week fans. They just got ammo to throw at you guys, right? In those battles. And I know you battled. And I know you have someone close in your life you talk smack to. And they're going to bring up some of these things now about Brandon Aiyuk. Just a really embarrassing situation, I think, for the organization. Now, by the way, nice news dump on Friday night. And they have the opportunity on Monday Night Football to make you all feel a little bit better about it with a win against the Carolina Panthers, which will go a long way to helping the San Francisco 49ers make the playoffs. And man, looking at the Sunday scoreboard, the 49ers are going to have to do some work. We still don't know the winner of Rams Buccaneers, but in a lot of ways, maybe you prefer the Bucs to lose to the Rams. I think it's probably more helpful to see the Rams lose, but I don't know if that one has that big of an impact on the 49ers, whether they make the playoffs or not. The Monday night game, obviously bigger. The Bears won, so that doesn't help the 49ers. They defeated the Steelers 31-28. The Cowboys defeated the Eagles, which is, I don't think you have to worry about the Cowboys, but maybe you do. If you lose a couple of games, might have to even worry about the Cowboys leapfrogging you in that playoff picture. The Eagles, though, become a little bit closer if the Niners can make a run for the 1 seed too. So again, that's a weird game where you hope both teams lose, kind of, and so the Seattle Seahawks obviously is a big one, and they defeated the Tennessee Titans a lot closer than I think you would have expected. Titans put in a second half effort there to keep that one close, 30-24. The Seahawks beat the Titans. The Packers defeated the Vikings, so that's not great for the 49ers. Packers are absolutely going to be one of those teams in that wild card bid, and the Detroit Lions as well. It seemed like they were going to mess around and try to not make the playoffs, because 6-4 going into this game, and they were down, but they ended up fighting back, getting into overtime and a long Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown run, and the Lions were victorious, which is not great news for the 49ers as well. So the Niners got to win to keep pace and keep battling in the NFC. And of course, Croc and I will be back to talk with you about that Monday Nighter post game right here. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks for helping make us the #1 sports podcast network.